Hello, hello, welcome to Quackalope, and today we are talking about Frosthaven, which is, again, one of the most anticipated games coming to Kickstarter in about a week, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
About a week and most anticipated of 2020.
It's a week too long
Pretty sure.
for me, but...
So, Dan and Mark just got finished playing a few scenarios of Frosthaven. We have the prototype in front of us. They sent us 6 of the core characters, the map board, which I'm sure you're seeing beautiful B-roll of now, a few of the core changes or rules, and 3 core scenarios for us to run through, all of which we're preparing gameplay on for you starting next week with the launch on Tuesday. Here's the thing. We got exclusive permission to talk about what's new, what's coming, what you should be excited about on Tuesday, not only when Quackalope's video drops, the gameplay video and the Before You Back video, but also the core game itself.
Yeah.
I mean, I assume people are hyped for my stuff, but it's like 17 people versus about 30,000 that are watching out for.
Pretty sure you're going to be outnumbered on that one.
Yeah, I think so. So, in this video, we're going to give you a quick rundown of everything we know about that is new coming to Frosthaven, the stuff we're excited about, and the stuff we've been able to table and see, and what our first impressions of it are. Like, for unbiased first impressions, first dip into this, if you can't tell, we're moderately excited. Along with that, I will have a flavor text video coming out a little bit later this week, setting you up for the campaign, and then on Tuesday itself, we are going to be putting out a Before You Back video, which is our official deep dive into a Kickstarter campaign. It's how we review, in some ways, Kickstarter games, talking about the gameplay, the overview, if you should back it all, or if like a piece or part is good enough, if they offer deluxe coins, do you upgrade, things like that. So check that out for a in-depth discussion on everything we're giving a preview of here. And we're going to be doing a Quackalope Chronicles. This is going to be our core gameplay series, at least 3 episodes, more if the audience demands, diving into and showing off the mechanics of all the characters and all the scenarios we're talking about right now. So, Dan, let's go ahead and start talking about the things we are excited about. What have we been told is included in Frosthaven, and what are the stuff we want to discuss that people should be interested in?
So, first and foremost, for me, to an extent, it's more Gloom Haven, which is awesome.
Sure. So if you like Gloom Haven...
Yeah, the core gameplay is right out of Gloom Haven. It's they've tweaked a few things, but at its core, it's Gloom Haven. It's the classic Gloom Haven, and it's more of it. And that alone is, for me, probably enough to make me go after it.
So you two have played through, together, it was very romantic, have played through the core of main story Gloom Haven.
Yeah.
And now we're approaching 6 new individual characters that we're actually going to be diving into. Now, what I can say, this game is Gloom Haven, new environment, some new mechanics. We're going to be talking about those. But a core difference is actually going to be the characters we're playing with. You were talking about how they're a little bit more puzzly. They're different from what you've experienced in core.
Some of the mechanics in the regular Gloom Haven is pretty straightforward.
Sure.
You're attacking, or
you have a
you're
berserker,
very agile.
you have an archer.
Yeah, or you're hiding the shadows, or you're really manipulating all of the different elements.
Sure.
And it was very kind of clear what you should be doing with those types of characters. Whereas here, we already introduced ourselves to a couple of puzzles. One of them, you summon quite a few characters to support you, but every time you summon them, it costs you some of your own health. So you got to make sure you never put yourself in a bad position to do your summon where you can then be eliminated immediately.
Or, for instance, like the Deathwalker, who's summoning up shadows and sort of teleporting or popping around the map, doing some interesting like terrain management and adjustment, where her character doesn't actually have to move, but the beings that exist on the game board are what she's controlling. A little bit more of like a strategic mapping system.
But then teleports into where those beings are. So when she doesn't move, she then pops into combat immediately, which is creative.
And then some of the other mechanics that make this game different, because we'll dive into these characters here in just a moment. There are a few other critical changes that make this different from staple Gloom Haven.
So probably the one that jumps off the page at me the most is the outpost of Frosthaven itself. So unlike Gloom Haven, where there was definitely a central town that you would go back to, and there would be some scenarios there.
Sure.
And then you go out into the world and you do other dungeon crawly type things. This one, you're actually sort of building and improving the town itself. You come back, you're a member of the community, you're improving buildings and city defenses and things like that. You're bringing materials that you find out in the wild back to craft materials and upgrade things.
So there's two cores to this. The two things that I think we want to touch on is going to be that city development specifically. Yep. The fact that you are part of this community, and as the community grows, as this far-reaching outpost actually gets better and gets stronger and healthier, you benefit.
Right.
However, the other thing is going to be seasons. Every 15 cycles of the game, you're going to switch seasons, going from summer to winter. When you enter winter, those road events or those town events step up a little bit, right?
Yes.
Your settlement might get damaged.
Yeah, it steps up in intensity, and these bad guys, these other creatures and whatever that are out in the world might attack your town.
Yeah.
So it's important to be building the city defenses that I mentioned earlier. Yep. Build up those defenses because some of the buildings might get damaged. Bad things are going to happen.
And it will critically affect your game and your characters if your settlement that you've been developing gets destroyed throughout the 6 months of summer.
And that's another puzzle I like what they're introducing, and having not played enough to really see what it's like to build out those towns, one of the other changes in the game is the loot system. And the loot system, when you actually go to loot a coin, instead of just getting coins all the time, you might be getting the resources that you need to build those all-powerful potions that we're so used to. The resources that you need to build your armor, the resources you need to build up the town.
Yeah.
Right.
So now, before, whenever someone would loot, it was usually for selfish reasons. I want more money.
Yep.
And
you
some people,
buy
like Dan, would always loot all the coins and leave some of us poor.
I did that once.
Once.
You've done it for a year and a half.
I feel like in this, it's true. But I feel like in this system, it actually encourages us to work as a team.
Sure.
To get some of the loot, to make sure we get some of the wood to rebuild the infrastructure or to build out the buildings we need to improve the town.
Yeah.
But then that also makes combat more competitive and more challenging. Because before, if you were ever in a really hairy situation, you just ignore all the loot. But if we're coming up towards the end of summer and we haven't finished the fortifications yet, and you know winter is coming, and you're going to be attacked, now do you spend the time to go out and loot while you're in one of your scenarios?
Yeah, it's a massive change when it comes to that loot specifically. So every time you pick up a coin, you're going to be drawing from a loot deck which has any variety of items in it. And like you said, those items buff yourself. They could. But they work together to help grow and strengthen the community. And so going out and getting resources becomes a salient part of how you actually build this town.
So one of the other things is, speaking of what you're doing in the summer.
I swear if you mention the thing I'm excited about, go ahead. But
based on how you interact with the other things out there, you can affect the event deck.
Oh, you're so close to what I'm talking about. Because that's a really cool thing. The missions you're going on. The different types of creatures you subdue, the storylines you go down, impact what that event deck is built of.
People you make mad.
And that's cool because it ties into this idea of the community actually being impacted by you being there.
And there's a little bit of that in original Gloomhaven as well, where based on how there's some of the scenarios are sort of choose your own adventure-y. Where you can choose to go fight this thing or help the thing. Things like that. And depending on what you do, at the end of that storyline or mission or whatever, you might end up shuffling in a certain event card that, later on that kind of comes back up or something. So it's not entirely new, but I think the way that they're applying it to where it can affect what's going on in the winter towards your city is a really cool idea.
Well, and here's the element that I'm excited about. Depending on what story you go down with your character, how they retire, they also leave a lasting impression on the community. So they either potentially retire into the community itself, building a better blacksmith or having a different weapon shop, or they leave their own imprint, right? Maybe a monument or a story. There's something that remembers them when they leave the game state. And for me, that's so cool because as you keep moving forward, your town's going to tell the echo of what you've done.
So one of the things in the original Gloomhaven is, yes, there's the town of Gloomhaven, and you're constantly going back there. But from a storyline perspective, I never really felt an affinity to the town. It was just kind of the place where you are, the base camp, whatever. the fact that you're actually building this out and your, beloved characters that you've taken on so many missions are retiring into the town.
Yeah.
It kind of, it will build, I think, a sense of like, this is your town that you're trying, we must protect it.
I think it's cool. And as someone that, I play a lot of big box story driven games. Yeah. Gloom Haven, when it comes to the mechanics, the accessibility, like outside of getting it to the table,
right.
when you actually sit down with the gameplay, it's fun, but it's a fun dungeon crawl with some really cool character building.
Yes.
I'm really hoping that Frosthaven brings in and introduces me to the story and the world building element that for me was missing in core Gloomhaven.
And with the opening scenario, with the opening lore, it really set itself up
it's making
to take
you
advantage
feel,
of that.
Yeah, it's making you feel tied to that.
Hopefully the designer actually took advantage of that and was able to push it through the entire campaign.
Well, and with the amount of dedicated space here and the core changes or core mechanics being revolving around that element of city building and storytelling there, I really do feel like they have done that. They've improved on the thing that, for me, needed the most improvement.
Right.
So, one other thing I want to swing through. We each have a few characters sitting in front of us. Let's go ahead and talk about these 6 characters we got a preview of. So we'll start down here. You have the Banner Spear.
The Banner Spear.
What's going on with her? How does she play? What's new when it comes to the Banner Spear?
So, she's a human character who really takes advantage of, or is dependent upon, how her allies are positioned on the map. Yep. So there's just, playing the level 1 level of this character, there's, in addition to, the position of the enemy that you're attacking, there's also green spaces that denote where your allies are. So you've got some surprisingly powerful attacks right off the bat in level 1, but you have to carefully plan where your allies are in conjunction, because she sort of like feeds off the power of them kind of thing. And
well, she's rallying, right? I mean, it's sort of, she is a Banner Spear for me as someone that is usually in a long line of people, right? The people they're fighting beside and fighting along with matter in their story. And I like that the mechanics of that reflect her.
And to an extent, she also has the ability to put down banners that can have kind of area effects for all your allies,
healing buffs,
as well as some summons that you can then control and help put in position for her effects. Yeah. So it's again, it's a little complex. It's you got to pay attention to what's going on around you and how the enemies might block you off and whatever, but there's some real strategy and flanking and stuff that kind of goes into this character.
I think the puzzle of all these characters are deeper than your average ones. I mean,
I think so.
Coming over here with the Deathwalker, playing the level 1 of this, first off, the lore is incredible. I mean, they exist in this far western regions of the world, this tribe that went to war with kind of the human races. And since then, they've resigned themselves to kind of wandering and fixing their past deeds. Instead of being war-hungry and murderous, they sort of go through and cast and bring back the shadows of the remnants of forgotten sins.
Right.
However, when one shows up, that's a bad omen for the community that's around. So the fact that we have a Deathwalker here is not a good sign for what's currently happening in Frosthaven. But the way it plays, you're going to be summoning shadows. First off, strong on its own. So you're going to be positioning yourself, attacking, stabbing. But the cool thing for me is you're summoning shadows and casting them across the board. They actually exist in empty spaces. So they can go underneath other characters. They can go through terrain, anything but walls. They can pop in under other monsters and creatures on the board. And then you're able to kind of pop out of them and stab or jab. I mean, there was a moment where I casted 5 hexes in front of me, paused it underneath another creature, and then double stabbed both of the ones next. Like, that visual for me was so cool. The hard part is generating and getting that engine up and running, creating these shadows across the board. You either do it by spending really expensive cards to pop one up, or setting up a repeating cycle where every time I murder something, it actually creates and casts a shadow of its own. So pulling that kind of from the earth and then utilizing them takes 3 or 4 rounds to get a good moment. But when a moment happens, if you can get this deck up and running, it's really rewarding.
Well, that's right in line with kind of the spirit of one of my favorite things about original Gloomhaven. It's kind of the crescendo effect of, you spend a few turns kind of building something up, and then it coalesces into something that just kind of visually in your imagination, you're just like, oh, that was cool.
This game
You know?
repeatedly drives you to a point of we're not going to win, to maybe we'll win, to there's no way we're going to win, to like struggling to get that final blow in.
And then you pop up two
then
things
it's epic.
and murder them.
Yeah.
Or
And
my
it's
skeleton running onto the necromancer. The conclusion,
Yeah.
the final blow of our first playthrough came from one of my summons, one of my
Yeah.
skeletons.
Yeah.
So the whole premise behind the necromancer is where it's just really in tune with life and death, and it'll give some of its own life to raise skeletons and ghouls from the ground.
You were repeatedly hurting yourself in order to summon, and then
Correct.
having to time your reheal effect like perfectly,
Yeah,
right?
so it's, again, that's why I love the puzzle for this one. So
Yeah.
the core mechanic of Gloom Haven is the same, top action, bottom action.
Yep.
Right.
But what it did was I'm hurting myself to heal somebody else, or I'm hurting myself to summon something, but making sure that I first am in a position so when I do that,
Yep.
I don't get lit up by a
Right.
bunch of arrows by something else, because then I'm just fodder
And
for
even
the archers.
even with your own self-wound effect, you were still our core healer.
Yeah.
Which is fascinating
Which is-
to me.
right.
Because he was spending his own life
The necromancer
to give us life.
Yep.
Yeah.
But then also, like, I mean, it came down to the wire a few times where you
Yeah,
had to time
because I'm
things
starting
perfectly.
starts with 6 life, so it's
Yeah.
not like I got a lot to spare,
No,
and
not
it's
a
We
ton
ended.
at all.
I only
a
had
cost
one
of
life
2
left.
for everything you do. So
I think
again,
one
phenomenal.
or two
Like,
cards.
same core game, same top
Yeah.
action, bottom action. The
Yeah.
reason we love the game is because we love that core
Right.
mechanic.
Yeah.
Another great puzzle coming out in the expansion.
Moving down here to the Geminate. What's going on?
The Harrower.
The Harrower. Yeah. A swarm of insects
yes.
that don't actually have a single consciousness, but have two warring ones existing in the
yeah,
body itself, and when around humans or other beings, coalesces into a form we can translate as human. But it's
So-
still a swarm of conscious insects.
So what's cool about this one is this is really a twist on kind of a
Harrower
character
Infestor.
from the
Sure.
Harrower
That's the Cthulhu
Infestor
guy.
Yeah.
from the original Gloom Haven, and this was a character that Mark actually played.
I loved it. It was my
And
favorite character to play.
It was like a plague bearer, basically,
Yep.
and it just
killed everything.
Constantly, it
Poisoned
curse
and
bombed
cursed
and
everything.
poisoned and whatever. But in this iteration, it's 2 different entities, each made up of all these insects, but you actually physically play with 2 decks at once,
Which is crazy.
which is nuts.
Yeah.
And depending on which card you play, and you know, and how you strategize, you can switch from one entity to the
Yeah.
other. And
You're
one of
actually
them's more of
doing-
a melee,
Yep.
one of them's more of a range character. But you have to balance them, because if you ever find yourself in a position where you don't have enough cards to play in the position you're in, you become exhausted.
Yeah.
So you've got to balance that, how you switch back and forth between the 2 entities. I'm really looking forward to exploring this one too. I
mean, the
I can say
dance-
that about every single one.
That's true, but the dance between managing decks
Yeah.
here, and this is one that I know Jan got a chance to sit down with at PAX
Okay.
East. This is his favorite character so far. Like, he's fascinated by what's going on here. So, you know.
It's great. And again, it comes back to the thing that always brought us back to Gloomhaven was that core mechanic.
Yeah.
Of top action, bottom action, and that just took it to another level, and that makes us so excited.
Moving down to the Drifter, this figure, this recluse from a forgotten time and forgotten land. What type of character is he again? He's an
Inox.
Inox. The Inox are, what, abandoned now? They've been nearly extinct across the landscape?
Yeah. Apparently they've kind of been driven out, and this is like a survivor. He's on his own. He's just getting by, surviving. You know, allegiance to no one.
So his deck is built around that constant grind and struggle. Throughout every part of his deck, you're going to see these cards that buff base attack or base movement. Here's the thing. Every time you set one down, you're giving yourself a timer. So these here have 6 rounds before they run out. But it's going to be giving me +2 attack to every attack action I do. So as I place these, I'm locking my hand, I'm limiting what I'm able to do, and then I'm using cards from my hand to drive forward on these trails. But you're setting yourself up for end game, right? You need your strong attacks to hit the moment you get to that final volley. But in 6 rounds, you may not be through that first door if you're not timing things right. That's the really interesting balance here.
And again, it also has the ability to move the tokens backwards.
That's the other
so
cool thing.
You can still manage it.
Right.
But again, like if you play too many of them, you don't have enough cards in your hand, and you risk exhausting. Because
You're
again,
not-
you can die by losing health, or die by losing your hand.
100%. And you're not locked in, like you said, you're not locked into 6 rounds being the limit. You can push and shove, and if you know you need 3 more rounds for that big volley, maybe you spend a few extra cards and like get rid of stuff from your hand to really push yourself that final sweep. Yeah. I just think the way this deck is built, this may be a character that I'm the most excited between the Deathwalker and the Drifter. Okay. I haven't had a chance to dive into the Driftwalker yet. We just finished a campaign where I was playing the Deathwalker. But I love this balance mechanic. I can already see kind of how it functions on the board, and how that timing is. I mean, you really have to be exact with it.
Yeah. Well,
last
that jumps
character
into
here.
the last one that I'm actually the most excited to play.
Oh, really?
We just played with a Necromancer, but I really want to get in with this Blink Blade.
Okay.
Because basically it's just a really tiny assassin that's going to kind of flash in and flash out.
Okay. And
just murder people. And but the really creative thing they did with this deck is you're going to be able to do a fast action, which is always fantastic.
Sure.
For example, the very first one here, it's an attack 3. The fast action, you get to add an extra attack, add a wound, and you get a experience.
Okay.
The slow action is you get -1 to the attack. So now your attack 3 plus all this great stuff is now attack 2.
So you're always doing a cross of a fast or slow action?
Fast or slow, but you're incredibly limited with your fast actions by how many counters you have here.
Oh.
You get the counters back by doing slow actions.
So
you
you're
have to like really
taking your time, and
stalking
then,
out your prey, and then you just flash, you go get them.
I like that.
And I'm just
That's pretty cool.
And again, I'm just so excited to see how you balance that out.
Again, designed around setting up a chain of events that give you one good moment.
Yeah, like setting up that.
You're an assassin.
Combo,
you're like the perfect little assassin.
And it's going to be great. You're going to love it. You're going to be jealous.
I've told you about that before, right? I've called you that before.
You are. You are just too kind.
Perfect little assassin. Some other things that I'm intrigued by or excited by here in core Frosthaven, other than the fact that there are a ton of other characters and monsters and scenarios and things to be discovered when they actually come to like showing off the core game, stuff that they didn't send me in the prototype, which I'm offended by, if I'm going to be honest. The writing at the lead of this was excellent.
Yeah, it was great.
Like the little snippets of lore and writing, as a person that loves flavor text, I am absolutely absorbed. I mean, I sat down in an airport just reading through some of these scenarios, and I was immersed in that airport scenario itself, and now sitting here playing, like, it really does set you into the world. What are any other elements that you guys know of that we want to talk
when
on?
were you at the airport?
Like 2 days ago. Yeah, you're going to have to leave. I was down there for Gamma.
So one of the other things that really jumped out at me, though, were some of the standees. These characters that we're coming up against...
These beefy guys?
...are massive.
Yeah.
They're the size of the bosses from the last scenario.
Yeah.
From the last campaign. And jumping into the game, there were 3 giant, beefy characters. So before we even got fighting, before we got even started, we got these new characters. We had like an hour or less prep time before we started playing. And when we set them up, that thing showed up right in front of our characters.
I like it.
And immediately we were just like, oh crap. Like, what did we just walk into? Which, again, the lore from what you just read leading into the opening scenario...
Feels appropriate.
It was phenomenal.
Yeah.
It worked really well. Yeah. And, again, it has the potential to really feed through the rest of the campaign. That's another thing I'm super excited to see. Is does it feed through? Did they take advantage of this opportunity? I have high hopes that they did.
I'm going to go ahead and say they did. I don't know. But I'm going to go ahead and say they did. Any other things we are familiar with? I mean, there's a ton we don't know. Right. But any other elements that we know of so far?
One more minor element that we are aware of, there's a couple of new effects.
Sure.
Battle effects.
Like there's 2 that we know of and 1 modified?
Well, there's one that's carried over from the expansion to the base
That's going to be Rejuvenate.
Regenerate.
Regenerate
carries over. And then also there's a Brittle and Bane.
Okay,
now,
what do those 2 do?
So Brittle, if you're inflicted with Brittle, then the next time you take damage...
Okay.
You take double that amount of damage. Just once, and then it goes away, but that can sting.
Sounds
the
horrible.
other one, Bane, is it's kind of like a curse put on your head, where instead of a miss going into your deck or something, at the end of your next turn, you lose 10 life.
Ooh.
For all 3 of our characters that we just played with, that would have been an instant kill.
The good news is maybe those will be introduced until later, because we have some mid-game scenarios here. Maybe they're letting us know those, because we didn't see it on round 1.
We did not.
But yeah, essentially...
you better get that heal out there real quick.
You've got 1 turn to heal.
That sounds horrible.
Yeah.
That is miserable.
So, on that note, this game clearly being miserable, thank you for joining us. Hopefully you enjoyed this preview. Like I said, we have the core prototype that they're sending around. So we have just a taste of what's going to come in this massive Frosthaven box. I'm stoked. I'm in love with what I've seen. It is already deeper and richer and more complex. Gloomhaven became a little bit of a mass game in a way. I mean, it was that perfect balance, right? That D&D mixed with storytelling, mixed with dungeon crawling, that the population loved. This feels a little bit more of a gamer-focused game. The people that fell in love with Gloomhaven, they got introduced into this genre, that are now looking for something more, this seems like it's catering towards them.
Yeah.
And I'm super excited about that.
It to me, it promises to be an awesome next step.
Yeah,
You know?
100%.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us. If you made it to this part of the video, you gotta subscribe. Do I need to tell you? I do need to tell them at this point, because there's still like 60% of them that watch or something that aren't subscribed. But here's the reality of the thing. We're putting out a ton more Frosthaven content. Yeah. We have flavor text videos, we have character profiles, we have gameplay, we have a before you back video. I mean, that's almost a full hand of stuff right there, along with all the other stuff I do here on the channel. Gameplay reviews, unboxings, Kickstarter videos, full kind of documentary videos based on my past history of being a documentary videographer. I'd love for you to be a part of it. So, if you survived us talking back and forth on a game that we absolutely love and hopefully you're excited for, stay tuned for what's left. Make sure you hit the subscribe button and leave a comment down below talking about what your favorite character might be to play, or what your current favorite experience from core Gloomhaven is, and what you're looking forward to in Frosthaven. Yeah. I know we all three would love to have that conversation with you, because we have some of our own that we'd like to share. Whatever you do, though, remember to do the important thing. Get out and play some games. We'll see you next time. Thank you.